Recently, a short news opened a major curtain. Saudi Arabia, the world's largest crude oil exporter, is actively negotiating with China to settle its oil trade with China's RMB. That is in China's national currency. It is expected to bypass the US dollar and make a big step forward in the internationalization of the RMB. Saudi Arabia is one of the world's top 3 energy exporters, and the oil trade between Saudi Arabia and China in 2021 was about 170 billion RMB. The Eurasian Economic Union, with Russia at its core, also immediately proposed to settle in RMB and hopes to hold consultations on this at the end of March. The settlement amount between the Eurasian Economic Union and China will reach 400 billion yuan. The speed of RMB internationalization was unexpectedly accelerated by the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. It is undeniable that the status of the dollar as a reserve currency has shaped, and the crisis of the dollar has emerged. Although it seems to be just one step, it will have a huge impact on the international monetary system. The world monetary system is changing. Today, we will talk about how the crisis emerged. On the surface, key U.S. allies have turned to China, pushing the dollar away and accepting RMB. Moreover, the export of crude oil from Russia is settled in rubles and RMB, which indicates that the era of hegemony in which the US dollar is bound to oil is coming to an end. The Bridgewater founder Ray Dalio's masterpiece, The Changing World Order, described the decline of many dynasties as a result of high debts, wars, and plagues as fuses. He specifically points out that the United States is in the 5th stage of declining. It is already the 3rd year of the pandemic. In the U.S., which has not implemented shelter in place for too long, the ruling party, in order to stabilize the dissatisfaction, or it is said that it is to cover up the fermentation of election fraud by distributing stimulus checks, immediately creating a record-high deficit. The Congressional Budget Office estimated by July 2021 that the fiscal year 2021 deficit would be $3 trillion, the largest in the U.S. history since World War II. On February 14, 2022, the national debt hit $30 trillion for the first time. The Congressional Budget Office predicts that the U.S. national debt to GDP ratio will continue to rise, surpassing the peak of World War II in 2023 at 106.7% and reaching 195.2% in 2050. In addition to the plague, the perfect storm requires war. The Russian-Ukraine war, now underway, its iconic role exceeded everyone's expectation. Kicking Russia out of this SWIFT system and weaponized the US dollar to attack other countries has made people around the world panic. Don't know when the weaponized dollar will fall on its own head. While everyone is sad and distressed for the refugees, we must jump out of the box, focus on the big picture of history, because we are going through a turning point in history. To see the reality clearly, one must understand the historical background. Let's first look at the international trade, which has a not too long history. International trade began with the age of navigation, which refers to the so-called discovery of the world by European countries starting in the 15th century. Then came the international trade, whether it's voluntary or forced by the cannons and guns. Any trade between two countries should be settled in their own currency. The essence of the trade between the two countries is the transaction of currency and physical objects. Due to historical evolution, especially after World War II, the United States has become the world's #1 power and established the Bretton Woods system. Therefore, it's very popular to settle the international trade in US dollars. In 1944, after Bretton Woods Conference, the United States turned the dollar into a global reserve currency. But in 1973, inflation in the United States was very high. The U.S. has by all means forced Saudi Arabia to use the U.S. dollar as the only settlement currency for oil trade. At the same time, the dollars earned by Saudi Arabia from selling oil have to buy a lot of U.S. treasuries. Since 1974, global oil transactions are basically settled in U.S. dollars by default. This is the background for the U.S. dollar to go from being equal to gold, to de-gold, to being bound to oil, to become the real dollar hegemony. However, time has changed, and since the beginning of the 21st century, the relationship between the United States and Saudi Arabia has become more and more delicate. In 2011, the United States shifted its strategic focus to the Asia-Pacific and withdrew its troops from Afghanistan. Saudi Arabia was disappointed. In actual trade, in the 1990s, the United States imported 2 million barrels of crude oil from Saudi Arabia per day. At the end of last year, this number had plummeted to less than 500,000 per day, less than a quarter of the previous level. On the contrary, Saudi Arabia is now China's largest crude oil supplier. More than 25% of Saudi Arabia's crude oil is shipped to China. In 2021, Saudi Arabia will export 640 million barrels of crude oil to China. China became the new and better trade partner for Saudi Arabia. Broken promises will not keep friendship long. Since the Russia-Ukraine war, Western countries led by the United States have imposed sanctions on Russia beyond the bottom line. The outright freezing and confiscation of Russian oligarchs' assets in Western countries is a crisis for everyone with enormous wealth. The reality serves as a warning. Who can guarantee that the next person to be sanctioned is not himself? It must be mentioned that it has been more than 6 years since China and Saudi Arabia negotiated using RMB to settle oil, and Saudi Arabia also decided not to put all eggs in one basket. It will open a large refinery in northeastern China. Everyone would like to embracing great trade, supreme infrastructure, and amazing China speed. Recent news shows that Biden's attempt to speak to the Saudi and UAE leaders have been declined. At the same time, Russia and India try to establish a ruble and rupee oil settlement system. The Russia announced the terms of settlement of oil and gas in rubles for unfriendly countries. In any case, the old calendar in which the world's oil is settled in dollars will be rewritten from the beginning of the Russian-Ukraine military conflict. The United States has repeatedly raised the national debt ceiling and printed dollars because of its high debt ratio. It has become like a drug-addicted person. They hardly can have yesterday once more again. The US dollar's glory as the world's reserve currency will be dimming at a speed visible to the naked eye. Which currency will become the next reserve currency for the world? The founder of Bridgewater Fund sees the rise of China and the RMB as the future. What do you think? Thank you for being with us. See you next time.